Mondays with Msgr Pope, here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey. And if you are working today, you might come across a couple different thoughts about Christopher Columbus. You know, maybe he helped discover the Americas, was a faithful Catholic, or he was a genocidal maniac who's only in it for the money. Quite a jump there, my goodness. But what do we believe as Catholics? And should we celebrate either Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, or do both? We're going to be hashing it out with Msgr Charles Pope. Good morning, Msgr.
Good morning.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you do.
I was going to say, I was trying to look back into, my childhood growing up. I remember someone in the 90s, the Cole saying, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and he was almost seen as a hero. I don't know what happened, but it seems completely different today.
It does, and it all comes back to this, this what I basically call this Marxist dialectic in our culture, that all of humanity has to be divided into oppressor and oppressed. And he's been assigned to the oppressor class, and therefore he's bad and evil, unambiguously so. And all the Native Americans, are the oppressed, and so they're unambiguously good. And it's just simply, it's class struggle, it's all that sort of stuff. So it all gets caught up in that. It all comes back to that so often. But anyway. I think Christopher Columbus, I'm not the biographer of Christopher Columbus, but I'll just say this much, that he's like any human being. He's neither a demon nor nor a saint right away. He's a mixed bag, like we all are. In fact, usually what I find in people is that their strengths are also their struggles. And so, yes, Christopher Columbus had a definite sense of how things were, and wanted to act on them. Find a way to the Indies, to India by way of sailing, paradoxically off to the west. And he thought he could do it, and he thought he had some ideas about it that were wrong, but it still paid off. And he was very determined, and yet that also made him again very dedicated. So is he insanely determined? Or is he a strong, definite person who can, who acted on his beliefs? You decide. And of course, the other aspect I think about this whole thing is that he did open up the way, but and it wasn't so much that he didn't really discover America per se, the Americas, we could say. Maybe he discovered this land, the West Indies, really. But he opened up the path. I think that's probably more of an important way of putting it. And navigate. He was a great navigator, and he opened up the pathway to get off to the west, rather than just so much set down a flag on the coast of Florida somewhere, which he did not do.
Yeah, it's interesting how some people demonize him, saying, "Oh, he was horrible towards the indigenous people." And if you look closer, and there's a lot of Catholic people that break it down really well, it wasn't him; it was his crew. I think there was a brief time where he had to leave some people there, some of his crew, at one of the islands, and he had to go back. And he told them very plainly, like, don't mess with these people. And of course, they didn't oblige.
And I think a good number of them were killed for it too. They didn't, but when he returned, at least 30 of them were dead. So, but all that's just a way of saying, I think that, I think personally he had some aspects of he had great love for the folks that he discovered. But I would say that it all comes up into this huge sort of suicidal tendency of the West, I think, to say that we're bad and we're terrible. And all these things, and then so Christopher Columbus comes to represent that, rather than what he just was historically. And again, I think the other thing we shouldn't omit is that he wanted to help spread Christianity.
Right.
That was important to him. He actually believed in his faith. And these things again. Well, how dare you? All religions are the same, and and we should have listened to them, and all the kind of crazy stuff that goes on even in the church today gets hooked up into this, and it's just a terrible and a sad thing. It says more about us than Christopher Columbus or those who wanted to spread the faith, It was a very, it was a very difficult time, I think, for us more. And, I don't know. How do you size it up, Keith? Look what we brought here. We did bring, a great civilization, the Western world and the Christian faith here to the Americas. And I think I would say proudly so that I think that the overall advantages were far greater. Are there some bad things? Yes, but I would also say this idea that somehow people own a certain land. The whole human family is migratory. We've always been that way. People, whole population get up and move, and there's all kinds of things that cause that, natural disasters or wars or what have you. But at the end of the day, people come and people go, and it wasn't all pleasantries here among the Native Americans either before we arrived. I think the human beings, everywhere you go, you're going to find glory and gory, both.
Yeah, wow. Well put. Yeah, there were peaceful tribes, and then there were not peaceful tribes. Which there's a story where he helped free some of the non-peaceful tribe from the very not peaceful tribe. So if it wasn't for, there's a lot of these things where if it wasn't for Columbus, a lot of issues could have continued within the local indigenous people for sure. And it's interesting too. I like just the way you mentioned we're kind of like suicidal in a way. 4 years ago there were all of those mostly peaceful protests, knocking down statues, specifically some of Christopher Columbus.
His statue is regularly vandalized here in Washington. Yes, it's regularly vandalized. Yeah. So
it's kind of like, what are you trying to say? Like, okay, you defaced a statue that's going to be cleaned up. Okay, good job. I don't know. It's wild to me that they do that.
I made a difference. I defaced a statue.
I really got him that time.
But I do want to say that I think in our current struggle with Columbus, it says more about us. Here's another aspect I think of it too, which is again, how can we recover in the church today a sense that the eternal salvation in the souls of the Native Americans who did come to Christ, many of them in large numbers. What's that worth? That's worth everything. You see, the idea that we shouldn't proclaim the faith and that somehow, people like St. Francis Xavier never got that memo. They got on ships and went off to far distant lands to preach and proclaim the faith because they really believed that people needed to know Jesus Christ. I wonder where they got that idea. Oh, that's right. It's from Jesus himself. He said, "Go therefore unto all the nations and preach and teach my gospel." And when human beings encounter each other, when great civilizations come together, there are often clashes and unexpected things, and also great blessings. And for all the chatter and talk about diversity today, I think in the Catholic Church, they all talk about it, but we live it. If you go to a typical Catholic parish, especially here on the East Coast, it's like, here comes everybody, every nation and people. And it's like a little mini United Nations coming together. You've got all of this amazing, just diversity that's in there. Right. And it's funny how for all the talk about diversity, apparently, us bringing our Western culture to the Native Americans is not proper diversity. It's not the kind of diversity we want. It's all a lot of words are thrown around, but there's a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of crazy stuff that goes on with that too.
It's heavily politicized, especially now today, which is unfortunate because, like we said, Columbus did something very well for the Western world. That being said, thoughts on celebrating Columbus Day or Indigenous People Day or both?
Yeah, I guess you could do both, but the problem is that it's kind of a political. It's sort of the Indigenous Peoples Day. Look, if we were going to be serious about that, let's come up with another day and celebrate it. Yeah. But to slam it down on Columbus Day and say, here, there's your Columbus. And, so this is, I think it's more provocative. So I can understand if people want to choose Columbus Day today. It's always been, not always, but it's been there for many, 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 many years, decades, and the celebration of Columbus Day. And I think that, I would be more to the point of wanting to say, well, let's go ahead and talk about Indigenous Peoples Day and come up with our own days. Like people when they want to usurp Christmas, or they want to, they want to take other holidays and just refashion them. Why not just come up with your own? If that's the case, but. So be it, So I guess I can see both sides, celebrate both, but there's also, we have to sometimes wake up. I don't think we realize how much the woke left is really, they're not going to be satisfied with any compromise we offer. Mm-mm. It's just not going to happen until every last ounce of our integrity is gone. And so somewhere in there, I think I'd be more prone to celebrate, say, Happy Columbus Day.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm absolutely with you. And I agree. Like, I think it was placed on this day to be more provocative, which removes the message, I feel. Like, I would be happy to celebrate Indigenous People Day any day. But, it feels like it's, like, done on purpose and just takes away the message of what that day could certainly be.
And most people who want to slam our culture are more than willing to live off the many values and virtues and successes of our culture too. This is a civilization. American civilization is a great gift, and you can slam it all you want, and then you go out and you live off the carcass, so to speak. It's like, right. Come on, And if you're that upset about the Native Americans losing their land, go take your house and give it to one. Somewhere this is just the nature of human interactions, and I don't want to throw holy water on the whole thing. Certainly not. Sure. But I also don't want to say, well, we're uniquely bad in this. Migration happens and people work it out. It's just like we're doing right now with the whole immigration situation. We have to find out a way to work it out. But there are clashes. It just happens.
Yeah. So do you think we'll ever see a Saint Christopher Columbus?
Not in our time. No, not in our time.
That's probably the case. My
I
goodness.
don't even know if I needed to be a saint. He was just historically very significant. Sure. And he had good things and bad things about him,
Very true. Wow. Thank you so much once again, Msgr Charles Pope, helping us kind of work through some of these interesting topics that we find ourselves waking up to every single Monday on Morning Joy. We appreciate you so much. You can also catch Msgr Charles Pope on The Quest, a pilgrimage of faith, weekdays at 4 p.m. on the Guadalupe Radio Network. He joins us every single Tuesday and Friday on The Quest, so make sure to put that on your calendar. And that's it for the end of our first hour of Morning Joy, where truth matters. Now, we understand you might be doing some things coming up soon, but otherwise, stay tuned. We have a whole another second hour of Morning Joy coming up right after this quick break here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.